Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Jack's Business Talk. Today I got my good friends Mark, financial firefighter, and Micah again. And today we're going to talk about using your investments to buy real estate with. So, Mark, do you want to start us off?
Oh, of course, man. Thanks for having us on, man. This is an honor. But yeah, so I go by the financial firefighter on social media. I'm a full-time firefighter in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm a realtor, property manager, and a real estate investor. So I do live in Honolulu, Hawaii, but I invest in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So where Jack's from or is, and about 6,000 miles away. And I've never stepped foot in that market yet, and we can kind of go into that if you want. But part of my claim to fame is I've kind of emptied out all my retirement account money, and I went heavily into real estate. And yeah, we can dig into that afterwards, man.
Yeah, definitely. So, Micah, do you want to give us a little backstory on you?
Sure. So my friend was a firefighter and he was watching Mark's content and he was saying, hey, you kind of have a similar thought process about saving, investing. Why don't you reach out to him? So I reached out to Mark, really grateful that, we had a kind of introductory call and he was telling me everything that he went through. And I've always been interested in real estate investing, but I never could afford anything out over here in Hawaii with my salary. So, after biting the bullet, I took a chance and now I'm embedded in this community and I'm so happy to be a part of this. And a similar thing where I haven't touched my 401k, anything like that, but I did liquidate my Roth, all the contributions to it. And I did liquidate my brokerage account, both with Vanguard, to be able to start investing in real estate.
Were you taxed pretty heavily when you did that?
The taxes weren't too bad. When I did the tax return this year, I was able to get a larger return than I did last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I was taxed not heavily, just kind of whatever the tax rate was, for withdrawing, and I did take a penalty. And for me, I think that's kind of what Dion always talks about for myself and whatnot, is that I always talk about it too, is that I went too quickly. I scaled too quickly. I mean, I'm glad I did it. It's just if I was more strategic about pulling out of my retirement accounts or just even getting invested in real estate, I think I'd be a lot further ahead. So I do have 14 properties. However, I think I'd be a lot further ahead if I was more strategic about it.
Well, why don't you continue with that? Like, what do you mean by more strategic? Would you have bought multi-units, or would you have waited for more for better deals, or
Yeah, I think part of it is the first few that I did purchase kind of tricked me. And I tell this a lot too, is they were very hands off, tenants paying on time, no issues. So I think the first four properties I got really tricked me into thinking real estate was easy and everything was, there's no problems, even, just having a tenant, you're fine, right? And, both of you already know that it never really goes that way. And you're going to encounter problems whether you have, the best screening process. You could place the best tenant in there and you still can have problems. And that's part of what I encountered. So, you know, the first, like I always say, the first few tricked me. And I said, you know what? Oh, this is easy. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to buy more properties. And it didn't go as smoothly as I thought it was going to go, just from some other things that we can dig into later, like weather related, to where it takes a long time to find tenants in certain times of the year, especially like in Pittsburgh where it gets a little cold. And then you have older properties there. So even though I did have reserves, you also got to understand the market that you're in, as far as these older homes might have a little more maintenance issues sometimes. So these type of things kind of bit me in the butt a little bit, where it kind of slowed me down to kind of have to let things kind of stabilize and settle themselves.
yeah, I don't, or I'm a little bit still on the fresher, newer side, but I've learned it takes about like 2 to 3 years to fully stabilize a property. I know the one I'm working on, I'm just going to finish it this year, and it's the fourth year. But I got to do a two-tier retaining wall and a roof on it still. But then that's it. Well, and some siding work, which I need to talk to someone about that because I'm not sure if I can just fix it or if I have to replace everything. But yeah, so 4 years for that one, about 3 years for the other one to get them stabilized. Micah, how about you?
Yeah, you know, great points. And I learned that as well, where, even though what I thought for my first property, I thought was more turnkey, I should have put more make ready costs to it, where it's like you want to have reserves, which Mark has stressed to me and has saved me a ton, where you want to have reserves just in case the worst happens, where it's vacancies or repairs. So just having that, like Dion says, is you want to keep your asset, not lose it by not having reserves. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing. You don't want to go through and stabilize the property and then end up losing it in the end. Micah, since you're up on the screen right now, why don't you talk about how you pulled the funds out and then bought properties with them and the whole process of going through that?
Yeah, so my first conversation with the lender, I always ask, when should I liquidate this? Because they're underwriting. So yeah, they would be really good at parties, underwriters. And I was just saying, when do you want me to move this over? But it was not up until maybe, I would say, half a month until they told me to liquidate it. And that was my brokerage. I think I had about 80,000 in there. So I liquidated that, and luckily that was enough for me to purchase the first property. And for the second property, I had enough to that liquidating that brokerage to purchase the second one. And then that was pretty much finished with the brokerage. And that's when I decided to check with Vanguard. I called them up. I made sure that I was contributing for 5 years, and that I was only pulling out the contributions only, so I wouldn't get taxed on anything. And that's what I'm sitting on now. But I want to stabilize these two first before I start looking for the next one. And that's my plan moving forward.
Yeah, you have to make sure to give yourself ample time between properties, just because you don't want something to come up that you weren't expecting while you're in the middle of another renovation.
Definitely.
Mark, do you want to talk a little bit about your process?
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely want to. I know we kind of touch more on the whole pulling out from retirement accounts and other portfolios, but I guess for me, the biggest thing was just really, looking at these retirement accounts, and you're kind of, I guess you can call it, they're in jail, right? They're kind of locked up for so many years,
Yeah.
where you're trying to plan something 30 to 40 years down the road, right? So you're putting money into these accounts, and yet you're hoping maybe taxes are lower in the future. You're hoping you're making less income on paper, right? So you pay less taxes, or you're hoping that you can figure out, how much money you're going to need to live off, for how long you're going to live after you retire, right? So I felt I've started to look at it, and like these accounts are really being handcuffed, right? I mean, you're restricted on how you can use them. You get penalized if you take them out early. You can only access them at a certain age. So that really started making me realize, like, maybe this is not the best use of my capital or my money, right? And I decided to, Mikey's doing it way more strategic than I am. And that kind of, this is just two great examples of how two different individuals would approach it, right? So he's being very strategic about only, pulling out what he contributed, trying to minimize taxes or penalties. For me, I was like, I just want my money. I don't want all these restrictions. I don't want to deal with trying to figure out, like, okay, I can only borrow this much. I'm trying to limit these taxes. I figured for me, it was like, I'm just going to take it out, take the hit now, but then now it's my money. I can do what I want with it. and that's how I'm going to allocate it into real estate. And that was kind of my approach. I didn't want all these restrictions and trying to figure out like the tax implications and whatnot. I mean, the one thing I would say is if you are gonna, take out from your retirement accounts or access it, the best thing you can probably do is make sure you do it at the beginning of the year, like January 1st. Make sure you take it out as early as possible. So if you do have any penalties or taxes to pay on it, you have, instead of 12 months, you probably have like 16 months, right? When tax season comes around. So that would be the best thing is if you are gonna access it, do it as early as possible in the year. So you actually have more months to possibly pay it back or pay the taxes on it.
Yeah, that's definitely really good advice. This is something I would not have thought of. Mark, how many properties did you buy and what frame of time?
Yeah, so I probably ended up, 14 total in maybe like a year and a half. But the big blow to me and kind of like I kind of talk about, like I said, it kind of probably slowed me down or set me back was kind of getting maybe about 10 properties in a very small time frame, like maybe 4 months. Because I did do a 1031 out of a property in Hawaii to buy properties in Pittsburgh, and we can talk about that later too. That's something I would do differently again also. But yeah, and part of that was going back to the whole weather thing, knowing your market. So I found great deals during that time frame when I did purchase in Pittsburgh in the winter months. However, that also made it difficult to find tenants, right? So most of the properties, and I prefer properties that don't have a tenant in place. I rather have it vacant so I can select, handpick the tenant. But for me, it was, I got these properties at great deals. However, now it took me so many months to try and find tenants. And I always talk about it too. I think when you're a newer investor, the one thing you get caught up in is you get caught up in wanting a certain amount of rent for your property because you've done all your research, you've done all your calculations, and you're like, okay, this is the rent that I'm supposed to be able to get. This is like this, I've studied this. This is my number. I know I'm supposed to get this. And you kind of, especially when you're newer, you're kind of sticking to your guns. You're like, oh no, because if not, you're almost like admitting that you're wrong, right? You did something wrong, right? Like I calculated it wrong, or I did something wrong. But so a lot of times in the beginning, you're like, okay, I need this much rent because I told myself I'm going to get this much rent. And you kind of stick to it too long when you don't realize that the vacancies is probably your biggest expense that you're going to have, right? So that's something I would have done differently too. I think I would have been more open to just getting a good tenant in there, but taking a lower rent just to fill it for the time being. And like you're saying, let it get stabilized, right? Get a tenant in there, let them start paying rent so you do have more money to maybe take care of certain things. But that would have been my strategy or what I would do differently.
Yeah, I know vacancy. I didn't realize how bad it could be at times. I know when I was doing a renovation on one of mine, it took me close to 9 months because I was too stubborn to hire in contractors and stuff. Because I was just like, oh, this is all work that I can handle myself. And it instead of it being if I would have hired in contractors, it would have taken 1 2 months. It took me 9 months because of my goofy schedule and stuff. And you can't make noise in certain times, or if you are making noise, you either run these big, loud, noisy saws inside the house, which makes it even worse for you. But you can now get stuff done. And trying to work around all that stuff because I work night shifts, it ended up taking me 9 months, and what should it ended up costing almost an additional $7,000 on because of the vacancy of not having someone there. That 7 months, yeah, it completely destroyed the budget.
Yeah, that's why another thing too is like, for a lot of people, sometimes they're kind of hesitant about investing remotely or out of state. And I think it really depends on, who you are too. Like for me, I don't have a construction background. I'm not a very DIY type of individual. So even if I was living there, it wouldn't really benefit me too much from where I'm going to be saving on doing this work by myself or doing the repairs by myself. So for me, that's another way I look at it as far as investing remotely or out of state is that, me being there is not going to probably save me that much money because I'm not going to be doing this work by myself or work doing the work myself. So that's another way I look at it too when I'm investing remotely.
I think it's honestly something that goes against me just because like I've grown up working on so much stuff, in families' houses, and I have a more mechanical mindset and stuff on how things work, and I always bring people in and get stuff, certified when I'm done. It's like, yeah, I could save a lot of money doing that kind of stuff, but then I shoot myself in the foot because I get too involved, and then on the other side, I get disappointed with contractors because I know I can do the work better. So it's a double-edged sword. But I'm slowly trying to treat, even though I'm in the area, I'm trying to treat my own places as though I invest out of state because I get too involved, wrapped up into them, and I end up shooting myself in the foot.
Yep. Good advice there. I think a lot of it too is cost of equipment and you know I don't know if you follow Matt, who's the Mojo Mindset on Twitter, he at YouTube,
No, I don't think I've
on
heard of him.
Instagram. But yeah, so he's been posting. They're kind of doing a DIY type of project on one of his rentals, and he's like, "Yep, this is my fourth trip back to Home Depot," kind of thing, right? And it's like, when you do it yourself, yeah, you can get it done. But when you're talking about, you also want to get it done like in a timely manner, right? Because you're trying to fill a vacancy or you're trying to take care of your tenant that may be there and you want them to get something fixed right away. But yeah, you can do the work yourself, but at the same time, like you're saying, it has to work around your schedule. So if you're not doing this full time, like it's not your primary job or primary thing, you could be actually costing yourself money, like you're saying, right? Like you're saying, I did it myself, but I had to work around my schedule. I can't make noise, and then it took me this long to do it, and it actually cost me this much money in the end. So that's another thing you got to factor in there is like, you know, do you have all these tools to do all these projects, or you're gonna have to be buying this tool for this one project that you might not do for another year, right? Or something. So
Usually,
that's
in my
another
case,
thing.
sadly, I do have all the tools most of the time.
Well, you probably do a lot of work then. A lot of these homes in Pittsburgh need a lot of work. That's why.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing I don't mess with anymore is, and it's just because I worked on my aunt and uncles and I worked on my parents, is sewage. I won't mess with sewage anymore. The stupid terracotta plumbing, it's like a rusty exhaust. You go to work on one section, it crumbles in your hand, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and next thing you know, what should have only been like a 6-inch section ends up being a 10-foot section and ends up having to be replaced.
And don't bring up plumbing to us, man. That's like a sore subject for me and Mikey.
I wanted to touch on what Mark was saying, and he helped me a lot because in the beginning, I wanted to go, go, go. And he said, slow down because I, even me, looking back now, I feel like I went fast. I went too fast. And I should have even slowed down, really took my time with it because I was just coming from the mindset of, oh, yeah, you can just buy retirement stuff in an instant. It's just a mouse click away. You can just deposit money into your Roth or whatever. That's instantly, crypto instantly. So I was coming from that idea and trying to bring that over to real estate. But real estate is so different. And, Lumberjack tells us too, is like slow and steady is the better way to go. And now I'm seeing that. So if Mark didn't tell me to slow down, I probably would have cashed in all my 401k because now I'm seeing how much of a jail that is, all that cash tied up, and it's killing me because I really want to use it, but I'm still making mistakes now when I'm buying. So it's like, I think if I can get my systems down, I think I'd be in a better place to buy because I have better systems. Then and that'd be a better time to, really think about trying to take all that money out.
Yeah, I think the smart thing is just to give like a year or so between properties. Like I just bought I closed Friday on that double duplex I was telling you guys about before. I just closed Friday on it, and I want to try and get everything renovated within the next month and a half, 2 months. But even once it's done, I'm probably not going to. Well, that's just the interior stuff. I need to do a roof on that one, but I'm not going to do the roof until the fall. And that's probably about when I'm going to start looking for my next one is in the fall.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. I mean, I think even like Mikey, like he's saying it, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? So something like that. I always say it wrong, but yeah, exactly. And I think that's, using your retirement accounts is one strategy. And kind of going back to, what I did, I think if I took a better approach, like how Mikey's doing right now, yeah, I would have been in a better position because I would have been able to get properties that I would have bigger upside on. So, a lot of the stuff that I did get are, they're great. They're great base hits. They're solid. However, it doesn't bring a lot of upside right now. And if I was to do it again, I think I would have done or dabbled in more like bird type strategy, or using bigger down payments to get distressed properties that needed the rehab, so I'd have a bigger upside on them. So that's probably what I definitely would have done differently. But I think I almost talked myself out of doing that. Like I talked myself out of it because I was kind of like, oh, do I want to do a rehab from 6,000 miles away? Do I want to, take on that headache? But now that I see it, it's more like I've built these systems, I put these systems or teams in place that it would be very manageable to do something like that. And so I think I talked myself out of it, but looking back on it, I think that would have been, oh, I mean, I know that would have been the better route to go because I would have used my capital a lot more efficiently.
So you guys were talking about the weather before. I know me and Mike were talking about the weather in a previous video. Did the weather of Pittsburgh throw you guys off when you first started coming over here? Like, because like me and Mike were talking in a different video about some other investors that were from like Florida and how they're not doing some things correctly. Uh, Hawaii's, correct me if I'm wrong, fairly warm most of the time, right? So like, did the snow and all that stuff throw you guys for a loop when you first started coming or investing in this area?
Well, I don't know if Mikey knew what it was, but when I was told to winterize my property, I had no idea what the property manager was talking about. I was like, what are you talking about? Winterize your property? Like, what is that? And so, like you're saying, did it catch us off guard? It kind of caught me off guard, as far as just like, I mean, I knew it got cold, but I didn't really know like there's like maybe a procedure, I guess, you would go through in the winter months, or especially if it's vacant, right? You want to handle it a certain way so that the pipes don't freeze and things like that. So definitely that's something. And I think, but kind of going back to what we touched on a bit earlier, not so much the weather, it's more just getting um accustomed to that there is a lot of older homes in Pittsburgh. And of course in Hawaii we probably have the same, areas that are like that. But being in property management out here in Hawaii too, but I don't see as much deferred maintenance on a lot of the properties, because we don't have as much harsh weather. The property, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course maintenance does come up, but you don't have a lot of these reoccurring type things that it seems like, in Pittsburgh a lot of these homes have these kind of reoccurring type issues, or just most of it, and even just getting over the whole basement thing. I think the other people that have also started investing in Pittsburgh with us, that is probably the hardest thing to overcome, is when you get the inspection report back and it has, like the basement is damp, or there's something. And I think that's the one of the biggest obstacles we got to get over, because we're not used to having basements in the properties out in Hawaii, right? So that's something completely new to us. And when you see like, oh, there's water or it's damp, you don't kind of realize like that's almost a common occurrence in a sense in the properties in Pittsburgh. So that's just something that's a hurdle you got to overcome. And like every market's probably going to have that, right? Some markets have basements, some don't, and things like that, right? So, but yeah, not so much weather, it's more just the age of the homes, I think.
You, Micah, what was your big surprise when you first started coming over to Pittsburgh?
You know, luckily, luckily Mark was putting out content. So when he was talking about winterizing and basements, I had to learn that way. So I was a little bit more prepared when I would talk with management and, going over different, just checking your market every day type of things. So when the management was saying that from October to February, it's kind of a dead zone in terms for vacancies and renting, that surprised me. That was something I had to get used to. And, there's a strategy in every market and also timing the market too. So I'm still learning that. And I'm still trying to understand how long do I have to watch the market to kind of get a grasp on how that coincides with economic shifts as well. So maybe that's thinking out of the box there, but I'm just trying to soak everything up, and I'm learning something every day, every time I see a new listing or see different millage rates in different counties. And yeah, it's always it's it is funny because my job is really, I can't really go any higher. I'm kind of hit the ceiling. So this has served as a great outlet for me where it feels like I have a mission. So at least it's something I can commit time to. Whereas in my W-2, I felt like I've kind of hit my ceiling. So I like that about it, where, I have something else on the side I can. It's almost like a part-time job where I can work on and get better at and improve.
Yeah, I personally feel like, especially, myself, I always enjoy learning new things, and striving and setting goals for yourself to work towards is, I think, just the type of people that we are, is something that we almost strive to do. Like, I know myself personally, I can't think of not trying to achieve something at any given time, because I don't know. I think if you weren't striving to do something at any given time, you're just slowly going to, waste away and pass away.
Yep, that was really, like I said, I kind of go back to that was kind of the path, that I was headed down. And I think it was just complacency, right? I had a great job. I have a great job, great retirement benefits. The pension is amazing. I'm not going to say it's not. The pension is awesome. It's just sometimes it just handcuffs you into thinking that you have to work 25 years or 30 years. And if I look back on it, and I'm glad I've done what I've done. And but definitely I know if I did things differently, I mean, I easily should be retired by now, and I would have probably had a great 10-year career in the firehouse, and I would have been fine with that. And I think that's the thing that guys forget about. They get in the firehouse and they think that they have to do 25 years to have a great career, and it's not really like that, right? If you did things differently, you could have a great 10-year career and be out and do other things that you might be passionate about. But I think a lot of people just get caught up into, the numbers of 25 years or 30 years and whatever age, right? Whatever the retirement age is for them. But and instead of looking at like, how can I get out sooner? And I think that's just, I'm glad I stumbled across it. I wish it was earlier, but that's why I'm trying to help a lot of the younger guys in the firehouse, to realize other opportunities that are out there. I mean, I'm glad Mikey got started. I mean, he's old though; he's not that young, but glad Mikey got started. But.
Mikey, are you a fireman too?
No, I'm a service technician and I do water treatment for hospital labs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, don't let him start talking about it because I have no idea what he talks about when he starts talking about water treatment. And I'm like, what are you
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah. No, no, don't let me drift off on that. No way.
But I'm super proud of the people that I've helped that got started. I mean, I you think it seems so obvious, like what we're doing. Like, you think it seems as if everyone should be doing it because that's how they're going to get out and retire early and be financially independent. But it's very rare that someone takes that plunge and takes that leap. and it's so easy not to do it, right? The retirement accounts that we kind of talked about how we're tapping into, or liquidated. It's so easy. It's just automatic, right? You're automatically just doing it every month, and you don't realize it. Every paycheck, putting money in, and you're like, all right, I should be good when I'm retired. And then, it comes to maybe a couple of years before you got to retire, and then you look at it and you're just like, shit, this is not going to be enough. How am I going to survive off of this, right? And I think that's the eye opener, right? It's very late when people realize that these retirement accounts aren't going to provide them this lifestyle that they're hoping for, right? And you don't want to be there, right? You don't want to be in retirement and you're having to pinch pennies, or be frugal, right? I mean, I want to be in retirement and be doing whatever I want to do, right? Just traveling and enjoying myself, and like Dion, right? I don't want to cook again. I just want to. I'm gonna eat healthy food, but I'm gonna order out, right? I'm gonna buy everything, right? I don't want to cook anymore, and that's kind of what it is, right? I don't want to be in retirement and be pinching pennies. I mean, that's kind of
You
the way
trying
I
to
look
say
at it.
that you don't want to eat ramen noodles every meal of every day?
No, but you got to do it for a while, maybe, right? I mean, sometimes that's
Yeah.
the sacrifice, right? But you can order out and still eat healthy, right? And that should, I mean, yeah, it's going to be more expensive, but you want to be at a point where it's like, I don't have to worry about money, right? I can do whatever I want to do and enjoy, and that's where I want to be. And I hate to bring it up, but I mean, being in the fire service, we go, we go to, people that are elderly, or and you see the situations that some of them are in, right? And it's just like, it's kind of sad sometimes, right? You see the living conditions that they're in, or maybe they're living with family members because they don't have any other options, right? And it's just like, they I'm sure they thought they were going to be great, in retirement, but it's like, maybe they lived 10 years longer than they expected, right? Or maybe they had some kind of life event that hurt their retirement accounts, right? But so it's like, that's what's great about real estate. I think this gives you more options, and it really comes down to that. It keeps growing, right? It keeps generating cash flow. Whereas your retirement accounts, once you stop contributing to it, right? Because you're not going to be contributing to it once you're retired, right? And so that's, it's going to stop growing. It's going to limit how much you can take out from it. But whereas the real estate, you just have so much more pieces on the board, right? Where you can move around, sell things, 1031, seller finance, all types of options you have, right?
I uh I know for me, I've been with the same company for over 10 years, and looking at where I started to where it's at now, I keep looking at more and more, and especially they're saying that the new $1 million in order to retire is now 1.5 million, 2 million. I was looking at it, it's like it's going to take me another. It's like it's going to take me my entire career, if not longer, just to get to the $1 million mark. And I was like, that's not sustainable by any means. And at that point, if I work that long, you're well within the no-go years. Because let's see, you got paper and pen in front of me.
Or you can move to Japan, and Mikey's going
Oh,
to live off of $2,500 a month.
yeah, it would take me 100 years just to get to $1 million with the 401k that I have. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get it, right? I mean, I get it. It's better than not doing anything. And yes, you should contribute to retirement accounts. But I
Oh,
think
I definitely agree with that. Yeah,
but people just think that's all they have to do. And I think that's, part of the problem, right? Is this, they think as long as they're putting in their retirement accounts, then they're fine. When in reality, you know, it's probably not going to provide them the retirement that they're hoping for. So yeah.
yeah, it's sad to say, but I know, like for me, like when I retire, my goal is to own like a small farm and pick all the vegetables and stuff that you need for the year and do canning and do different processing techniques. But that's just for fun. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to do that out of necessity, and it almost scares me in some ways, thinking that no one's preparing or thinking that far in advance.
I mean, I don't like to bring it up a lot, but I think the whole, being locked down and the shutdowns is, in one way, it woke a lot of people up. I think before that, people were just kind of had their blinders on and were just doing their day to day, right? They're just people were just going to work, paying their bills, putting their retirement account, just doing their thing, and everything being shut down. It let people see like what the hell is going on around me, right? Like what is going on, and it made people kind of sit back and like just really realize like you know I got to do different things, right? I got to change what I'm doing, and I think that's it, for me. That's what happened, and it just made me realize, um, yeah, it just woke me up.
Micah, what was your big wake up moment?
I was having tunnel vision with the retirement accounts, and when they changed it, it said, "Oh, it's not 4% withdrawal rate; it's 3.5% withdrawal rate now." And you see that meme where the fist, it slowly your hand slowly starts turning to a fist. That was me. I was like, I can't do this no more. I gotta find something else. And seeing that marathon for the 401k, I'd rather do a half marathon with real estate. And now it's like I really, Mark talks about Japan, but because of him, I really see a pathway to getting there instead of working and slaving away until I'm, 62 or whatever, probably 65, 67 now. I actually see a path for me to get there sooner. But it still takes time, still takes patience, but much better than 401k.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not exactly sure when it came or what the situation was that happened, but I just remember working my day job or my night job. I was working two jobs, and I was like, there has to be more to life than just this. And I started talking to another guy about it, and he told me to read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and got told me to listen to Minority Mindset. And another guy told me about Bigger Pockets, and I started just consuming all that. And Rich Dad Poor Dad got me into the more of the mindset of investing. The first guy I was talking to, he was talking about stocks and stuff. That's how he's working towards financial freedom. And at first, it's like, oh yeah, I could do stocks. I was like, because I used to do like little competitions and stuff, and I usually finish within the top 100 of the state. But then I realized when it's your own money and not just a computer game, just how difficult it really is. And when I started, it was just bad thing after bad thing with the economics and stuff. And like I was where before playing the game, because everything we're going in a bull market at the time, I was seeing 12, 15% growth. Since we were in a bear market when I started with my real money, I was lucky to see 3, 4%. I was like, this isn't going to cut it. I was like, I had to find something else. And that's when I started looking into real estate, listening to Bear Pockets. That's eventually how I ended up finding Dion and getting switched more over to the ORAC community.
Yeah, it's a great community, and I think that's the biggest thing is getting in the right rooms and getting around other people that are doing it. And I think that's the hardest part, right? It's easy to get um I don't know, not distracted, but almost like talked out of it, right? Is most people, most of their friends or their circle is not doing this, right? They're putting it in their retirement accounts, or they're doing the traditional things, and it's so easy for them to tell you that you're crazy, or that what you're doing doesn't make any sense, right? So I think having all these communities out there is super amazing. And you know maybe you don't connect with the one rental at a time community, right? You could have another community out there, but I think it's just getting in those rooms and finding where you fit best. And that's probably the most important thing, is just being around other people that are doing it.
So, Mark, not to change the topic, but before you're talking about 1031 exchange and how you wouldn't do that again, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it again. I would have done it differently, in a sense where, we kind of touched on it earlier, how maybe I talked myself out of dabbling in the burst strategy or rehab type of things. I should have, or not should have, but what would have been better is that if I because usually you want to, if you're going to sell or liquidate or 1031, you want to probably get a bigger asset after. And, so I had a condo in Hawaii, and I guess I did technically go up. I converted into multiple single family homes. So I guess, from a condo to homes, yeah, you are probably taking that next level. However, I kind of broke the asset apart, right? So I kind of spread it apart into, 4 or 5 smaller assets in a sense. I should have just went bigger. And same thing, I kind of talked myself out of it at the time because, I felt like I'm a new investor, what how am I going to do this, and there actually was at the time, I should have, I don't recall what the address was, but there was like I think it was like a 7 or 9 unit complex, um, that I want to say it would have been perfect for the 1031. I would have been able to do it. It would have had a good enough or big enough down payment to where I wasn't super leveraged on it. I would have been able to cash flow. But like I said, I kind of talked myself out of it, right? When you first getting started, you're kind of just like, oh, maybe I'm not ready for this. I'm not, so that's something I would have done differently is if I did a 1031 again, I would have just went to a bigger asset class. And so maybe I should have waited, maybe I should have waited a little while. But like I said, I got so excited, like, oh, this real estate stuff is easy. I'm gonna just buy all these homes and I'll be fine. And I am fine, but like I said, I think I just slowed my progress down. And so I would have either went bigger or I would have kept the asset in Hawaii more to be able to access the equity in it. So what I mean is I have these rental properties in Pittsburgh, but what I'm finding challenging is being able to access the equity in the properties. So because I don't live there, being out of state, and especially how lending is and the economy is right now, lenders, banks, they're kind of restrictive, or especially if you don't live there, right? So maybe if I visited often, I could start building relationships with the local banks, but that's not the case. But so what I'm finding challenging is it's difficult to access the equity in the properties because I don't live there. So what would have been another option is if I just kept that condo in Hawaii, yeah, my cash flow is going to be minimal or less, but now I'd have this access to this capital a little bit easier because the property's in Hawaii. I live in Hawaii. Hawaii does have very favorable HELOC products. So that's another option that I would consider doing different. So either go bigger in Pittsburgh or just keep the property here to where I have more access to the equity, and then I can use that equity to deploy or invest another way.
I didn't know that story about the commercial building. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Like I said, I kind of just talked myself out of it. Yeah, I think it was like a seven. I forget. It was like 7 or 9 unit. I think there was one 2 bedroom unit, or maybe one bedroom, and the rest were studios. And it even had a coin laundry, I believe, in the basement. Um, yeah. So, but I know parking was very limited, so that was the one thing. And then it was probably in that C class neighborhood. And like I said, it just kind of talk yourself out of it sometimes, right? And I didn't really have anybody that I knew that was in that space, right? So, now, being part of the, kind of the one rental at a time community, there's so much other people that are doing different things. Some people are doing multifamily, people are doing more Airbnb or BRRRRs, but at that time it was kind of just, me and a few people, and it's just like, shit, none of us have something of that size, right? So yeah, you kind of just talk yourself out of it, and but yeah. And what's going on, Jack? What's with all the hat changes, man?
I was
I
curious
didn't
how
know we
many
were supposed to
hat
be
change.
changing. I didn't know we were supposed to be changing hats, man.
I was curious how many hat changes it was going to take it until someone said something. But no, that's something that me and Cynthia want to do. Wait,
Oh, another
got
one?
another hat.
Yeah, you got like props and stuff for it. Yeah, let us know next time.
But me and Cynthia, I think we're probably gonna get like, I think our goal overall is going to be about 5 to 7 duplex, triplex, fourplex. And I think at that point we're going to start looking into bigger stuff like 5+ units. And if the right deal comes around, we're not going to say no to it by any means. It's just this is kind of what we're focused on now, trying to get 30-year fixed debt and getting our foundation built before switching to something bigger. But maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. It's
I don't think there's ever really a wrong way. It's just things, be willing to adapt and change, right? I think that's the biggest thing. And you know, I always tell people, most people when they first do this, they're like, I want to get 100 properties. I want to I want to get this much doors and this much, and then you start doing it and you're just like, maybe that's not my goal. I really think Dion and Coach Carson, their message is kind of the two that I relate to quite a bit. And Dion is definitely that most amount of cash flow with least amount of doors, and Coach Carson is the small and mighty investor. It's kind of just really understanding what your enough is, right? And you don't want to create a Frankenstein for yourself to now where you've created more work for yourself, or you've created this monster that kind of it has a mind of its own, and now you're trying to figure out what it's going to do next. Where if you kind of prune the tree, right, and kind of consolidate, then you might have a more efficient and effective portfolio. And I think you kind of it takes a few years, right? You do it for a while, then you start realizing what's going to work best for you, right? And I think definitely for myself, my initial goals have changed. Maybe not the cash flow number, maybe the cash flow is going to stay the same. It's just the amount of doors that I want, right? I think that's what's kind of changed for myself.
Yeah, I know when I first started, I was thinking that I wanted. I mean, I remember crunching numbers and thinking, oh yeah, I want 360 apartments, and I'm very quickly gotten to the point just like I think I'm gonna get up to about 40 for both me and Cynthia, and then from there we'll probably start selling some and taking the money to pay off others, and at that point we're gonna start working things down as far as we can,
Yeah.
and I think we can very easily end up, under 20.
Yeah. It doesn't take, like Michael Zuber says, right? All it takes is four. If you have four paid off rentals, probably, but when you want to retire or whatnot, I mean, that's life changing for most people, right? And I think that's what people don't realize, right? They're all, a lot of people, when you first talk to them, they're always like, oh, how is $250 a property gonna make a difference, right? And they just don't realize how everything compounds and grows on each other. And then at a certain point, right, maybe you do get, maybe like you're saying, you consolidate, maybe you get to 20 properties or doors or whatnot, and then you consolidate to a lesser amount, but now you have all these paid off properties, and you're just getting all this cash flow. And for a lot of people, they don't have that vision, right? They look at it at first like, $200 a month, is it worth it? Is it going to make a difference? And they don't realize it. And then come 10 years from now, you're
That
making a thousand
$200 is going
dollars
to
a
be,
property. Yeah.
it's 1,500 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like talking to Dion folks, right? They're this many steps ahead of us, so they already laid the blueprint and telling us, yeah, this is how it works, right? And that's all everyone is doing. Everyone is just kind of piggybacking off of each other, and I hate to say it, we're all cheating, right? We're all copying, right? We're all copying someone else, right? And unfortunately, school, you're told not to cheat and told not to copy, but in reality, I mean, that's kind of how you get ahead, right? That's how you're gonna, you find someone that's doing it right, or you find someone that's ahead of you, and you kind of copy their system, and chances are you'll do well for yourself.
Yeah, there's no point in reinventing the wheel just to figure out the same process. You can use someone else's process and excel with that and not waste all the manpower and energy trying to develop your own system because there's only so many things you can possibly function and think of at one time. So if you have to implement someone else that's already worked on that process, why wouldn't you? But
Well,
like
what I want to
I've
know is, I want to know is if you're gonna have enough properties so that when me and Mikey come and visit, we have like space to stay.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, there should be enough.
The one thing about copying, because I copy a lot, is I don't want to copy too much because I also want to help. Because if you're just taking and taking and taking without also providing too, then that's not really the best way to go about it in my opinion. And even though I'm so brand new, I still try to find ways that I can help. I don't know what Mark thinks about that, but I try in the smallest ways to help. And if there's ever something I see that maybe that could help, I offer it up. Maybe it doesn't work, maybe it does, but it's like if you just take and take and take without at least trying to bring something back in return, then I don't know if that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, that definitely. It's a give and take, because if it's just one-sided, then people aren't going to want to talk to you or have anything to do with you.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to just like anything, right? It's understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, and you know, like I said, I always joke about it. Like Mikey is way more technical than I am. Like he's gonna run the numbers a lot more. He's gonna have his spreadsheets out and whatnot. And that's one of his strengths. That's so if someone was looking to get started, I'd be like, hey, yeah, go check with Mikey. Mikey probably has these spreadsheets that can help you or show you what he's doing, right? And for me, and I think that's where I struggle a little bit though, is because I think I'm an outlier. Like I think for me, things don't bother me very much. I just roll with it. And for a lot of people, it's hard for them to relate to that sometimes. They're stressing out about certain things or they're worried about certain things. And for me, I'm just like, yeah, it is what it is. It'll figure itself out or whatever. And I think sometimes that's what I have to remember. And I think that's why sometimes I have a hard time relating with some people when I'm trying to help them is, they're they're stressing out or they're worried about certain things. And for me, I'm like joking around or I'm teasing them about it or I'm having fun with it in a good way. I'm not trying to but it's like, they're stressing out about something and I'm just like, like, don't worry about it kind of thing. That's why I got to get better at. I got to realize that like I think I'm the outlier, right? Not everyone is like me and more people are going to be stressing out about it or worried about it. So that's something I got to work on is just kind of like realizing that I'm the outlier here. Like not everyone has my personality kind of thing. See, Mikey's laughing because he knows because he probably brings up stuff to me and I'm just like I brush it off and I'm just like whatever. It'll correct itself kind of thing.
Yeah. When my vacancy was getting a little longer, I was stressing. I was stressing. And Mark really helped me put it to his perspective because he was like, yeah, you're gonna have some punches thrown your way. You just gotta navigate through them and just come out as best you can on the other side. So it was a learning curve for sure.
I know one of the things I started liking to do is anytime, Mark, you post something on YouTube, I definitely like to save those for days that I'm working, because you have this calm demeanor, that calm, joking demeanor about you. And usually, whenever I'm about ready to just lose myself because the machine's acting up and everything else, I just start listening to you, and it helps calm me down. Be like, yeah, well, this will eventually end. Yeah, it sucks, but it'll
It
eventually end.
it usually does. It usually figures itself out. And I think Millennial Mike kind of talks about it a little bit about, first responders and whatnot. I think that's just part of our makeup, because we take courses, we take classes, we drill, we train and whatever. But no no situation ever goes like the drill or no situation goes like the training. there's always something different, or something, has to be, throw a wrench into the plans, and you just got to be able to adapt. And I think that's kind of what separates, some of the different guys in the firehouse, or the police service, or first responders, is some guys can roll with it, and some guys kind of stress out about certain situations, and then you can kind of tell like what guys can handle certain things. And I think, that's really what it comes down to, is just really, you know you gotta realize that you gotta figure it out at the end of the day, right? It may not go as planned, but the I guess, I don't know if it's the joke, or kind of the mindset is, we don't want to leave the situation as worse than we arrived, right? So you're going to go to a scene, you're going to go to some sort of incident, and the key is, we're going to leave there and it's going to be minimized, right? We're not going to leave there and it's going to be in shittier condition. And I think that's kind of the mindset, is you got to just take it for what it is, and let's figure it out. There's a solution, and yeah, we'll move on after that. It may not be the most ideal solution, right? But there is a solution, and you just learn from that one, right? You make your decision, and yeah, maybe you could have done a little bit better, but that's for the next one, right? You just keep getting better at it, and but the one thing is, you don't want to make the situation worse, right? You don't want to get a bad tenant and then you do the same thing the next time, right? You don't want to you don't want to place a bad tenant because you cut corners, right? And then the next time you're going to do the exact same thing. No, that's on you, right? If you're going to keep making those same mistakes, right? So it's kind of, hey, we made a mistake or whatever, let's figure it out. Next one, let's do better, and that's all it is.
Yeah, I think after you make a mistake, if you don't take a step back and reflect on what you could have done to prevent it, because one of the things I was just reading is in a book, Extreme Leadership. I forget who wrote it, but basically it's saying that if anything goes wrong, and you're the one in charge, it's your fault. Either you didn't communicate something correctly, you didn't uh, or show someone, you didn't teach someone. It basically all falls down on you, which sounds horrible, but they said it's very freeing at the same time, because then you control everything. So although everything is stressful, it's relieving, because you have the power to control and change everything. The people that you trust, the people to, you know, relay messages, all that kind of stuff. And you can then fix what was broken because of that.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think part of that too is just understanding, though, that as a leader, you can't do everything. Well, I mean, you can do everything, but you're going to probably have a very stressful time, right?
Well,
And I
well
think,
that's the other thing the book talks about is you can't do everything. It will occupy too much mental capacity, but you have to trust the people below you, and communicate well with them, that they can then make their own choices, and keep going on the general path of which you set forth for them. And you have to trust, and letting them make decisions doesn't get to the point where it's burning you down with every single decision, and you just have to trust in the process.
yeah, I think that's what's great about the one rental at a time community, is because you have so many different strategies and so many different millionaires and so many different mindset, that one may not relate to you, but another person may. And I think that's part of being a great leader, is being able to communicate to different types of people. And that's what I'm always trying to figure out too, to the guys that I'm talking to, is kind of like, how am I going to get this message across to them? Is it this newborn child they have, where they got to start planning this retirement for that child, or do they have elderly parents, that they have to worry about taking care of? So for me, I think that's the number one thing too, is just being able to communicate with different people, and figuring out how to get this message across. Or even like, we go back to, like I said, Mikey's more strategic. He's going to have spreadsheets. So for him, it's that you probably got to show him the numbers more, like, and that's why there's someone that maybe we're talking to try to help get started. and they want to see more number type stuff, then yeah, Mikey would be the great resource to send them to Mikey and Frank. Frank, those guys are, like I said, those guys stay on calls like 4 hours talking about numbers and crunching numbers. And it's like, yeah, those are the guys that I would send to, like, hey, you want to see spreadsheets, you want to see more detailed numbers, and these are the kind of guys to go talk to, right?
Mikey, what are your thoughts? You're kind of sitting there a little bit quiet.
I agree. I am more analytical, and that's one thing going through Matt's boot camp is I do wish I could have more control over things. And that's just something I'm kind of going through now where I'm seeing, investing out of state, you kind of have to let go of control because you're going to have other people managing stuff for you. So you gotta, you know, you gotta kind of roll with it and get used to it and just adjust. But, investing real estate is so unique. It's nothing like I've ever experienced before. But I'm pretty confident this is the best thing that I've done so far.
I know for me personally, like one of my biggest flaws is actually the more number side. And that's why I have my Excel spreadsheets as pre-done as I possibly can. So I can just plug in a few numbers and see what the yield's going to be. Because even like that one deal that me and Mikey were looking at, I'm not sure if you're doing it on the fly, those numbers, but you were actually overwhelming me a little bit with all the numbers you were shooting at me. I was like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I'm looking through and I'm crunching them too. But yeah, the way you're pulling the numbers out as fast as you were, I was actually really impressed.
I'm surprised Mikey still has a girlfriend after all of this.
Only because she's in Japan. Only 'cause
Mikey's on every Zoom call. Mikey's in every YouTube live. Mikey's on comment. He's everywhere, man. He's the biggest supporter out there. I got guys messaging me, "Who's this Buzztune guy?" I want to ask Mikey, man.
Oh,
You're gonna see him on Comedy Central next.
see, you just gotta find ways to help in the smallest ways. That's my motto.
Well, we're trying to help Mikey grow too. He's trying to grow on Twitter or X, so trying to get him to do his thing. And Jack, you're starting your YouTube channel, so we gotta help you get
Yeah,
your channel out there.
I'm bringing that back. I was telling Mikey last time. I can't remember if I told you, Mark, or not, but I used to have an outdoor channel. It was a lot of fun, and I loved doing it. But it just got to the point where it was more work because trying to go out every week and try to create content was very overwhelming. This isn't as bad because it's like, I could pick a 3 hour block, shoot almost 4 or 5 videos talking about different topics and stuff, and it's just a lot less in depth because with the outdoor channel, yeah, 5 hours you'll get a video shot, but then you have to upload all the videos and then you have to edit all the videos, and I'd have another probably 10, 15 hours just in editing one video. Where this is kind of more, since it's a conversation, you're just talking about a topic and stuff, it's more cut and dry. So unless there's something going on, I might only make 4 or 5 cuts for the entire video.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Well,
kind of my plan too.
my goal for this is to make it as streamlined and easy as possible so I can stay in it for the long term and not make it seem like a chore.
Yeah, and then once you get it to whatever subscriber count you're looking for or what, then
Only 10 million.
and then when your portfolio is, you're retired, then your outdoor thing you can outsource it, right? Then you can start making all these videos and outsource, but you got to start at some point, right? You got to start
Yeah.
and build it up. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now is get it built up a little bit before I leave the fire service, so that when I actually do leave, then it's kind of a little bit more self-sufficient. It's kind of running on its own in a sense, right? So that's kind of the plan, but I'm having fun. I think you're having fun. I think we're all having fun. I think Zuber guys are very pleased that a lot of people in the community are starting, to take his message and start whatever passion project they have or whatever channel they want to start. And I think they're very happy about that.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. I kind of hope to meet a lot of them next year in the Vegas event.
That is the plan. I think next. I mean, it's going to be hard to beat the first one. You know, the first one is always, well, I don't know. That's a tough one. The first one was great, but I think now that he saw how it went, the second one might be even better just because he has a better idea of it. So yeah, it's
I
gonna be.
I made Zuber laugh about or a few weeks ago. I sent him a message because someone was talking about the Las Vegas events, and I think it was after you were on. You were talking about having it in Hawaii. I sent him a message saying, "Yeah, after you retire enough people, you should have it on one of those riverboat cruises so you're not surrounding yourself with a bunch of 80, 90, 100-year-olds, millionaires. You can surround yourself with your own clan."
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna be a Crocs clan. We're all gonna wear Crocs on this river cruise or whatever. Yeah, I'm gonna bring
Uh,
Crocs helps the algorithm if you didn't know that.
I want to see
Yeah.
Jack in some cowboy Crocs.
the cowboy Crocs with the foam spurs.
You know,
Oh, I think that requires another hat switch.
I-
Yeehaw!
yes.
Say something,
Well,
Mikey.
I- I- is it? Yeah, is it wrap up time?
yeah, I think it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, it was fun, man.
We gotta get Steven on next time.
Yeah,
He's
definitely. It'd be nice to have
yeah, you
more
would. I
people.
think you get along. You guys would get along.
Yeah, Steven's a
I've
cool
never
guy.
gotten along. I've never gotten not gotten along with anyone.
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
you haven't met Chris Wissing yet. He's a dickhead.
Well, that part's getting edited out.
No, you should leave that in there so I can use it. And I'll send it to him. I sent him
I'll,
a I sent
I'll
him
make it a short.
I sent him an Instagram message the other day. I don't know if you guys seen it was like the one when you and your friends get together, is the one with the rock and had the gorilla, and the gorilla just comes up and just flicks him off. I sent it to Lucy. I met him
Oh,
in Vegas. That was the first time I met this guy. I couldn't get him. He just followed me everywhere. Jack, this guy just followed me everywhere I went, man. He just
you have a
messaged
secret
me now.
admirer.
He just messaged me like 5 times while we're doing this call. Nah, he's
All
a
right.
good guy. He's a good guy
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Humboldt, I know that area pretty well.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was fun, you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
was
gonna be
great.
fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, I might give StreamYard one last chance. Yeah, I'm hoping that what caused my short in that room was why the Wi-Fi was being finicky when I'm on StreamYard. So hopefully that's it. Because I don't know. Zoom, I have no issues. So I don't know.
But you're saying StreamYard was having when they bring people together, you saw another channel having issues.
Not as bad though. So when Christian from Cody and Christian had a live with Zuber, Dion, and Millennial Mike, I could tell there was a little bit of a lag. So even when I did it with Sierra, Jeremy, and the guy Berenger, the first maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes were fine. I mean, you could catch a couple parts where you would hear the voice and you could see like the lips weren't moving yet, but it was pretty much fine. Towards the end of that one, it was getting really bad. So the one that Christian guys that live they had was kind of like that, like how my beginning portion was, where it was fine, but you could catch points where you could kind of see that lag in it.
I'm
So
I'm surprised that they didn't. I mean, my last video, the way I edited it, um, I had to voice over the video, but I just used the recording of my voice from the video in the voiceover. That way I can cut it and put different pictures and stuff in it. And I used to do
what
this all or do that all the time. So I would use the audio from the video, put it down in the audio spot, and I would line it up with my lips as I was talking. So the actual audio from the video, it's actually muted, and
Hmm.
it's the B-roll that you're actually listening to the whole time.
What do you use for your editor?
I always use something free. Before I was using the free Microsoft Word or the Microsoft one. Now I'm using I think it's Chip Mate or here, let me just double check. Clipchamp.
Hmm.
But I don't use expensive ones. I've tried to use them and they're just so above and beyond and overkill with everything that I'm doing right now. If I was to bring back the outdoor channel, I would definitely start using like Premiere, Adobe Premiere. I would start using that because then it gives me more control over the visual effects and stuff. Because you can't be doing a white balance every 2 minutes. It gets to be ridiculous. But for a background that's not changing or anything, and I'm more or less scrutinizing over audio, Clipchamp is good enough for me.
All right, man. It was fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is fun. Thank you guys for coming on. There's lots of insight here, and I hope everyone has learned something from it.